My dad secretly married, and his new wife removed my dead mom's photos. I evicted her from my $2.5 million house. And when she sued me for $1.25 million, the judge destroyed her in 30 minutes. I'm 25 years old. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, and I still can't believe all of this actually happened. Like, I don't even know where to start, but I need to tell it because it literally destroyed my relationship with my father, and I almost lost my mom's house, the house where I grew up, where she grew up, where my grandmother grew up. It's a huge house, you know, one of those ancestral ones with 7 bedrooms and like 8 bathrooms, with a basement and a backyard with a pool. And when my mom died when I was 16, she left it to me in her will. Not to my dad, to me. Amy, my mom's lawyer, made sure everything was legally sound and clear, and basically the house has been mine since then. Although my dad lived with me, obviously, because I was a minor and someone had to be there. You know what I mean? The thing is that my dad and I always had a more or less good relationship after mom died. I mean, it wasn't perfect because he worked a ton as an engineer and I was dealing with the grief of losing my mom at 16, which is a terrible age for something like that, but we managed. He respected the space, respected that the house was technically mine, and I never gave him any problems about anything because he was my dad, and that was that. Moxie, my Cocker Spaniel that I adopted like a year after mom died, became my constant companion. And honestly, that dog saved me in many ways because there were days when I didn't even want to get out of bed. Everything changed like 5 months ago. My dad went on a trip, said it was for work, that he'd be gone for about 2 weeks. Normal, he traveled often. But when he came back, he arrived with this woman, Steph, and he tells me just like that, "Hi, honey, meet my wife." And I was like, "What? You're what? When did you get married?" And he just smiled and said, "Surprise, we got married last weekend. This is Steph, my high school girlfriend. We reconnected a few months ago." And there I was, standing in my living room, with Moxie barking at this woman I'd never seen in my life, trying to process that my dad had secretly married someone I didn't even know existed. But wait, it gets worse. Turns out Steph didn't come alone. She came with her twin daughters, Lizzie and Lexi, who are 20 years old and in college, and with 2 huge dogs that had no idea what basic training was. My dad tells me they're going to stay with us for a while, until they find their own place. And I thought, well, it's temporary. I can deal with this for a few weeks. The house is giant anyway. They have plenty of space. But from day one, I knew this was going to be a problem, because Steph started walking around the house like she owned it, opening doors, looking at rooms, and I could see in her eyes that she was like calculating something, you know? The first 2 weeks were basically a progressive nightmare. Steph started demanding space in my closet, in my bedroom, because according to her, she needed a place for her clothes and the guest room my dad gave her didn't have enough storage space. I told her, no, that my bedroom was my private space and that there were literally 6 more bedrooms where she could put her things. She got offended, told my dad I was being selfish, and my dad called me aside to ask me to be more flexible because Steph was going through a difficult time. When he didn't explain what difficult time, just that I should try to be understanding. The twins were a whole other issue. Lizzie and Lexi would walk into my office when I was on work calls, use my laptop without asking permission, eat my food that I bought specifically for me because I have a particular diet. Once Lexi or Lizzie, I still couldn't tell them apart well, walked into my room without knocking and found me changing. She didn't apologize, just laughed and said something like, "Oops, sorry, I thought you were working." And I was like, "And that gives you the right to enter without knocking?" But she just shrugged and left. The dogs, oh my God, the dogs were a total disaster. They weren't trained at all. They peed everywhere, barked at all hours, and one day one of them attacked Moxie in the yard. It bit her paw, and Moxie started bleeding, and I completely panicked. Took her to the emergency vet, and it cost me like $800 between the consultation and treatment. When I got home and told Steph what happened, you know what she said? That dogs were just animals being animals and that Moxie probably provoked them. I stood there, staring at her, unable to believe what I was hearing, and my dad, my own dad, took her side and said that accidents happen and I shouldn't make such a big deal. But what really broke me was the photo thing. I came home one day after a meeting with a client and all the family photos that were in the living room, the photos of my mom with me, of my mom with my grandmother, They had all been removed and replaced with photos of Steph and the twins. My mom's photos were piled in a box in the basement, like they were trash. I ran up the stairs screaming, found Steph in the kitchen and asked her what right she had to touch my mom's photos, and she looked at me with this superior face and told me, "This is your father's house now too, and I'm his wife. I'm not going to live surrounded by pictures of a dead woman." She said, "Dead woman," like that, with contempt, as if my mom had been nothing. I was shaking with rage, literally felt like I was going to explode, and I said something like, "My mom built this house with her family. This house is my mom, and you have no right." And she laughed. She laughed in my face and said, "Your mom was a bad, useless mother who couldn't even stay alive to raise you." And there I completely lost control. Started screaming at her everything. Told her to get out of my house. That I didn't want her there. That she and her daughters and her filthy dogs should leave immediately. My dad appeared, and instead of defending me, or at least saying something to Steph, he yelled at me to calm down, that I was being disrespectful to his wife. I think that was the moment when something broke in me. I looked at my dad and told him, "You have to choose. Either she leaves or I leave. And if I leave, you're leaving with me because this is my house, not yours. Legally, this house is mine. Mom left it to me, not you. And if they don't leave in a week, I'm going to take legal action." My dad turned pale. Steph started screaming that I couldn't do that they had rights, that they'd been living there long enough. Basically all nonsense arguments. But I had already made my decision. The next day I called Amy, the lawyer who handled my mom's will. I explained the whole situation, told her that my dad had married this woman I didn't know, and that they had moved into my house without my real permission, and that now Steph was acting like it was her house and I was the guest. Amy reviewed all the documents and confirmed what I already knew. The house was 100% mine. My dad had no legal rights to it, and I could legally ask them to leave. She prepared a formal 30-day eviction notice that I gave to my dad that same afternoon. When I gave him the paper, the expression on his face was something I'll never forget. It was like shock mixed with betrayal mixed with anger. He said, "Are you really going to do this? Are you going to kick out your own father?" And I answered, "I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking you to respect that this is my house and that your wife has crossed every possible boundary. If she leaves and the twins leave, you can stay, but if you insist they stay, everyone leaves." He chose Steph. He said they were a family now, and that he wasn't going to abandon his wife because of his daughter's tantrums. Tantrums. That word hurt more than I can explain. During those 30 days, I changed all the locks in the house. The lawyer told me it was legal to do so after giving notice. Installed a security system with cameras at all entrances, and moved all the important documents and my mom's jewelry to a safe deposit box at the bank. I called Joshua, my partner for like 2 years now, and told him everything. He was amazing, supported me completely, offered to stay with me so I wouldn't be alone, and honestly, I don't know what I would have done without him at that moment. Joshua comes from a normal middle-class family where people respect each other and communicate, and he couldn't believe that my dad had chosen this woman over his own daughter. In the 3rd week of the eviction, while I was cleaning the attic because Steph had been storing her stuff there without asking, I found an old box with letters. At first I thought they were just old things from my grandmother, but when I started reading them, I realized they were letters between my dad and Steph. Love letters. From when my mom was still alive. The date on the letters, there was one that said 2008. I was like 7 years old then, and my mom was completely healthy. The letters were explicit, romantic, talked about secret meetings, about how much they missed each other, about future plans together. My dad had had an affair with Steph during his marriage to my mom. I sat on the attic floor with those letters in my hands and cried for the first time in weeks. Everything was starting to make sense in a horrible way. The way my dad sometimes disappeared for hours when I was a child, the way my mom sometimes looked sad for no apparent reason, the fights I heard through the walls but they thought I didn't hear. My mom knew. My mom knew about the affair and still stayed with him. Probably because of me, because she thought I needed an intact family or something. And then she died of cancer, without ever telling anyone, protecting my dad's secret until the end. I went down with the letters and threw them on the kitchen table where my dad was having dinner with Steph and the twins. I said, "How long? How long did you cheat on her with this woman?" My dad turned, pale again. Steph tried to grab the letters, but I moved them before she could. He finally admitted that yes, that he and Steph had had an on and off relationship for years, that they had met in high school and never really got over each other, that when they reconnected at a class reunion, it all came back. That my mom found out at some point, but that he promised her he would end it with Steph, and he really tried. But after Mom died, Steph contacted him again on social media and they got back together. I asked Steph directly, "Why did you come back? Why now?" And she, with this calm voice that gave me chills, said, "Because I'm broke. Sophia, because my investments failed, because I lost my house, because I needed a place to live, and your father always loved me more than your mother anyway." She said it just like that. So casual, as if it wasn't a horrible confession. The twins looked uncomfortable. Lexi even apologized softly, saying they didn't know the whole story, that their mom just told them they were moving in with her new stepfather. On moving day, day 30, I hired a moving supervisor because I didn't trust that Steph wouldn't try to take things that weren't hers. And I was right not to trust, because I literally found her trying to pack my mom's jewelry, antique candlesticks that had been my grandmother's. She even tried to take an original painting that had been in the family for generations. When the supervisor told her she couldn't take any of that, she started screaming that she deserved compensation for everything she had endured, that that house should be as much hers as mine because she was my dad's wife. The supervisor had to call the police because she refused to leave the items. I thought that was the end, that they were finally going to leave, and I could start healing and reclaim my house and my life. But 2 weeks later, I received legal documents. Steph and my dad were suing me. The lawsuit alleged that I had caused them severe emotional extant distress, that my dad had a right to the house because he had lived there for years, and that Steph deserved compensation for contributions to the household. What contributions? Replacing photos of my dead mom with hers? They were asking for half the value of the property, which according to the most recent appraisal was like $2.5 million. They wanted $1.25 million. Amy almost laughed when I showed her the lawsuit. She told me it was ridiculous, that it had no legal basis, that my mom had left me the house specifically in an airtight will, and that neither my dad, nor much less Steph, had any rights to it. We went to court 2 months later. My dad couldn't even look at me during the hearing, but Steph was there with her lawyer. A cheap one, from what I could see, arguing that she had been forced out of her home, and that she deserved compensation. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed all the documentation, and basically dismissed the case in less than 30 minutes. He said the property was clearly and indisputably in my name, that I had followed all the correct legal procedures for eviction, and that Steph's lawsuit was frivolous and without merit. He told Steph that if she filed another lawsuit without basis, she could face sanctions for abuse of the legal system. I left that courtroom feeling validated but also empty, because winning legally didn't change the fact that my dad had betrayed me, that he had chosen this woman over me, over my mom's memory, over everything. Like 2 months after court, I was working in my office when I heard knocking at the door. Moxie barked. I checked the security camera, and it was my dad, alone, with 2 suitcases. I opened the door with all the doubts in the world, and he looked destroyed, had dark circles under his eyes, had lost weight, looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He asked if he could come in, and I let him but didn't invite him to sit down, just stood there waiting for him to say what I had to say. He told me that Steph had cheated on him, that she had been seeing another man while they lived together, that when my dad lost the case and it became clear he wasn't going to get anything from my house, she started treating him differently. That one night he came home and found Steph with the other guy in their apartment, the one they had rented with, what little my dad had saved, and she told him to leave, that she had never really loved him, that she only needed him to get out of her financial situation, and now that she had found someone with more money, she didn't need him anymore. Basically kicked him to the street with his belongings in suitcases. My dad asked me if he could stay, temporarily, just until he found his own place. He told me he was sorry, that he had been an idiot, that he had chosen wrong, that he destroyed our relationship for a woman who never really loved him. I didn't know what to say. I was still angry, still hurt. But he was also my dad, and he looked genuinely destroyed. I told him he could stay, but under conditions. Mandatory family therapy, absolute respect that the house is mine, and that if at any point he tried to contact Steph or bring her back in any way, He would leave immediately and our relationship would end forever. Now we've been in family therapy for like a month. It's hard. There are sessions where I scream, where I cry, where my dad cries. We're talking about the affair, about why my mom never said anything, about how it affected me without me even knowing for years. My dad finally admitted that my mom threatened to divorce him when she discovered the affair, but that he begged her not to, for my sake, to maintain the appearance of an intact family, and she agreed because she loved me more than she hated the betrayal. That broke my heart in a new way, knowing that my mom endured that pain just so I could have a normal family. The twins, Lizzie and Lexi, sent me messages a few weeks ago apologizing. They said their mom had lied to them about many things, that they thought they were really going to be a happy family, and that they regretted invading my space. I responded that I forgave them, that they weren't to blame for their mom's manipulations, but that I wasn't ready to have a relationship with them yet. Maybe someday. I don't know. Joshua is still my rock through all this. He officially moved in 2 weeks ago because he was spending so much time here anyway that it didn't make sense for him to keep paying for his apartment. My dad and he have a cordial but distant relationship, and that's fine for now. Moxie finally healed completely from the bite, although now she's more cautious with strange dogs, which breaks my heart a little because she was always very friendly. I put my mom's photos back in their place, cleaned the entire house of any trace of Steph and her family, and honestly, I'm trying to rebuild my life and my relationship with my dad. I don't know if we'll ever be okay. Again, if I'll ever be able to fully forgive him for choosing that woman over me, over my mom's memory. The therapist says that forgiveness is a process, not a single event, and that it's okay for it to take time. Some days are better than others. Some days I can be in the same room as my dad without feeling anger. Other days I see his face and remember everything and have to leave the room. Last week, my dad asked me if I would ever be able to truly forgive him. I told him the truth, that I didn't know, that I was trying, but what he did hurt me too deeply. His eyes filled with tears, and he nodded, said he understood, that he would spend the rest of his life trying to make it up even if it was never enough. And that's all I can ask for right now. I guess that he tries.